Oh,
as I
it's
was.
easy here.
Yeah.
Hold.
Oh.
Ah, see, it opens.
Sometimes an actor wins too early. An Oscar, a breakout role, a moment so big that Hollywood decides who they are before they've had the chance to decide for themselves. The label sticks, the shorthand hardens, and everything after that is measured against a version they never fully chose. Mira Sorvino won an Academy Award at 28 for Mighty Aphrodite. Within 2 years, she was everywhere. It looked like the beginning of something unstoppable. So how does a career like that quietly shift off course? Let's peel it back. Mira Catherine Sorvino was born on September 28, 1967, in Manhattan. Her father was Paul Sorvino, the character actor best known as Paulie Cicero in Goodfellas. Her mother, Lorraine Davis, was a former actress who became a drama therapist working with Alzheimer's patients and had marched in the 1963 March on Washington. Acting was a daily reality in the Sorvino household, a family language that came with both reverence and warning. Paul Sorvino did not want his daughter to become an actor. He told her that acting should be a singular obsession, and if she wanted to do anything else equally, she should do the other thing. He knew how the industry could use people up. He wanted her to have options. She took those options seriously. Growing up in Tenafly, New Jersey, she acted in backyard plays with her childhood friend Hope Davis, who would later become a well-regarded actress herself. She performed in theater productions at her school, but she also excelled academically in ways that had nothing to do with performance. She attended Harvard, studied East Asian studies, spent an exchange year in Nanjing learning Mandarin. She even helped start a mixed vocal group at Harvard, sang in jazz clubs abroad, and wrote a Hoops Prize-winning thesis on racial conflict in China. She graduated magna cum laude in 1989. This was not the resume of someone coasting on her father's name. It was the resume of someone determined to understand the world before she tried to perform it. This matters. Mira Sorvino's intelligence was not incidental to her career. It shaped how she approached roles, how she understood characters from the inside out. The woman who wrote an award-winning thesis on racial dynamics was the same woman who would later inhabit Linda Ash with enough empathy to win an Oscar. Those are not contradictions. They are expressions of the same mind at different frequencies. And eventually, that breadth became part of the tension between who she was and what Hollywood wanted her to be. After Harvard, Sorvino moved to New York. She waitressed, auditioned, and worked at Robert De Niro's Tribeca production company. The early years were exactly what you would expect. Long stretches of nothing, punctuated by small openings. Her first screen work was 6 episodes of the teen series, Swan's Crossing, in 1992. Her real entry into film came when she was hired as third assistant director on The Indie Amongst Friends in 1993, directed by Rob Weiss. Over the course of production, she moved up to casting director, then assistant producer, then was offered a lead role. The film played Sundance and received positive notices. It was not a hit, but it put her on the radar of people who mattered, including Robert Redford. And it said something about Sorvino that would prove true her whole career. She was willing to do every job on set before she got the one she wanted. That is not vanity. That is discipline. In 1994, she appeared in Whit Stillman's Barcelona as Marta Ferrer, a Spanish woman navigating the social tangles of American expatriates in Cold War-era Spain. Stillman's films are talky, precise, full of conversational irony, and Sorvino held her own convincingly enough that audiences were genuinely surprised to learn she was not Spanish. She played the role with a flirtatious intelligence that felt lived in rather than performed. That same year, she played Sandra Goodwin, the wife of Rob Morrow's congressional investigator in Robert Redford's quiz show. It was a small part in a prestigious film. The right people were starting to pay attention. Then came Mighty Aphrodite. Woody Allen cast her as Linda Ash, a cheerful, profane, golden-hearted sex worker. The role was, on the surface, type, the ditzy blonde with the squeaky voice. 100 actors could have played it as a cartoon. What Sorvino did was find the real person inside the caricature. Linda Ash is funny, yes. She is loud and brassy and says outrageous things. But the way Sorvino plays her, there's a warmth underneath the comedy that makes the character feel fully alive. You are never laughing at Linda. You are laughing with her. And in the quieter moments, you are not laughing at all. You are just watching a woman who does not know how extraordinary she is, and rooting for her with everything you have. She later said the shoot was agonizing, that she was neurotic throughout, that every night brought a new nervous breakdown. That kind of anxiety tells you she understood the stakes. She was taking a character that could have been dismissible and making her indelible. That takes more than talent. It takes a kind of emotional courage that does not show on screen but is present in every frame. The performance won her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, plus the Golden Globe, the Critics' Choice Award, the National Board of Review, and the New York Film Critics Circle. When she gave her acceptance speech, she ended by saying the award honored her father, who had taught her everything she knew about acting. The camera found Paul in the audience, covering his face, weeping. It remains one of the most moving moments in the ceremony's history, but it also set an expectation. The Oscar told the industry Mira Sorvino was a known quantity. The truth was she was still becoming. What followed was remarkable for its variety. Sorvino did not do what many young Oscar winners do, which is chase the kinds of roles that might earn another nomination. Instead, she followed her curiosity. In 1996, she played Matt Dillon's long-suffering girlfriend in Ted Dem's ensemble comedy Beautiful Girls, bringing a complicated tenderness to what could have been a thankless part. That same year, she starred as Marilyn Monroe in the HBO film Norma Jean and Marilyn opposite Ashley Judd, earning both an Emmy and a Golden Globe nomination. To move from Linda Ash to Monroe in a year, to play one of the most scrutinized women in American history and make it feel like more than impersonation, tells you about the ambition and depth of her range. Then came 1997, a year that should have cemented everything. She starred in two very different films that both connected with audiences in lasting ways. Romy and Michele's high school reunion, opposite Lisa Kudrow, was a bright, deeply charming comedy about two best friends reinventing themselves for a class reunion. Sorvino's Romy White had an effortless buoyancy. The way she and Kudrow play off each other, the absurd sincerity of their friendship, the hilarious lies they tell about inventing post-it notes, the dance sequence that somehow becomes the emotional heart of the whole film. It became a cult classic, the kind of movie people quote to each other decades later, the kind that grows in reputation long after its release. That same year, she led Guillermo del Toro's Mimic as Dr. Susan Tyler, an entomologist battling her own mutated creations beneath New York City. Del Toro's films have always been interested in the collision between the beautiful and the grotesque, and Sorvino understood that register. She did not play Susan Tyler as a placeholder. She played her as someone whose mind was the most important weapon in the film. She carried that studio production with authority and focus. The entomologist Thomas Eisner later named a chemical compound, Mira Sorvino, after her in honor of the role. It tells you the performance was believed, not just by audiences, but by the scientific community it depicted. In 1998, she appeared opposite Chow Yun-fat in The Replacement Killers and starred in Paul Auster's Lulu on the Bridge with Harvey Keitel. In 1999, she played a Bronx housewife in Spike Lee's Summer of Sam, a sweaty, paranoid drama set during the Son of Sam killings. In 5 years after her Oscar, she had played a prostitute, Marilyn Monroe, a bubbly best friend, a scientist fighting monsters, an action heroine, and a character in a Spike Lee period piece. She was not building a brand. She was building a body of work. And in Hollywood, that can be a problem, because the industry has always been more comfortable with actors who do one thing brilliantly than with actors who do many things well. An actress who could be anything was, paradoxically, harder to place than one who could only be one thing. That was the bind Sorvino found herself in. The late 1990s were a period when Hollywood was consolidating. The mid-budget adult drama was contracting. Franchises were expanding. Actors who resisted easy categorization found the phone ringing less. Sorvino would later say that after the mid-90s, major studio offers seemed to slow dramatically. The kinds of roles she had expected to see simply stopped coming. The work had been strong. The Oscar was recent. Nothing visible explained why the calls stopped. It was a mystery that gnawed at her quietly for years. This is not a failure story. This is a story about misalignment. An actor whose strengths were varied and grounded in craft, moving through an industry increasingly interested in something narrower, something simpler, something easier to put on a poster and sell to a global audience. But there was also something beneath the surface, something that would not become public for nearly 2 decades. In 2017, when Harvey Weinstein's predatory behavior was exposed in reporting by Ronan Farrow and others, Sorvino was among the first women to come forward. She described rebuffing his sexual advances and believing her career suffered as a result. Later that year, director Peter Jackson confirmed that when he was developing The Lord of the Rings at Miramax in 1998, the Weinstein brothers told him Sorvino and Ashley Judd were difficult to work with and should be avoided at all costs. Jackson said he and partner Fran Walsh had been enthusiastic about both actresses and had even met with Judd about 2 possible roles. After a conversation with Miramax, both names were removed from the casting list. Jackson later said he believed he and his team had been misled about both actresses. Director Terry Zwigoff said that when he wanted Sorvino for Bad Santa, the Weinsteins would hang up every time he mentioned her name. Sorvino called the revelation heartsick. It was the first concrete confirmation of something she had long suspected but could never prove. The quiet drying up of opportunities was not just normal Hollywood ebb and flow. It was, at least in part, retaliation by a powerful man for her refusal to submit to his advances. How much was Weinstein's interference? How much was structural industry change? It is impossible to fully untangle. Both were happening simultaneously. Both were real. Reducing her story to just one explanation does a disservice to the complexity of what occurred. What is clear is that an actress at the peak of her abilities found doors closing in ways that only made sense much later. And the cruelty of it was that it was invisible. No public confrontation, no headline, just silence, and doors that stayed closed because the people behind them had been told things about Mira Sorvino that were not true. That is one of the most insidious forms of power, the ability to shape someone's reputation without their knowledge. The early 2000s were brutal for mid-range movie stars. Not the very biggest names, the Julius and Toms, who could open a film on name recognition alone, but the tier just below that. The serious, versatile actors who thrived in dramas, independent films, and character-driven stories. The budgets for those films were shrinking. The theatrical window was narrowing. The conversation in Hollywood was shifting toward intellectual property, toward built-in audiences, toward the kind of pre-sold brand recognition that a character-driven performance, no matter how brilliant, simply could not provide. The space for a mid-budget drama starring a serious actress was vanishing year by year. This was not unique to Sorvino. A whole generation of talented 90s actresses found themselves competing for a shrinking pool of roles that matched their abilities. What Sorvino offered was depth, intelligence, and the willingness to disappear into a character completely. These qualities serve a different kind of cinema, one that values transformation over recognition, interiority over spectacle. That cinema was becoming harder to finance and distribute. Even without Weinstein, the terrain would have been difficult. With him, it became close to impossible for the career she might have had. One thing you notice about Sorvino over the years is a certain steadiness. She was never a tabloid figure. She was never the subject of breathless gossip or spectacular unravelings. She was in a relationship with Quentin Tarantino in the mid-90s. He was her escort to the ceremony where she won her Oscar. She married actor Christopher Backus in 2004 after meeting at a friend's charades party, and they had 4 children. She lived her life quietly. That quietness was not retreat. It was a choice. And in a town that rewards confession, she chose discretion. She channeled her public energy outward. She became a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, fighting human trafficking with real specificity and commitment over many years. She traveled, testified, and wrote about it. This was the Harvard graduate using her platform for something larger than herself, without packaging her conscience as content. When the conversation turned to why her career had not followed the expected trajectory, she was measured. She did not dramatize. She acknowledged the pain with a clarity that suggested she had already done the hard internal work of understanding what happened and moving through it. The years after stardom were not empty. They were full of different things than what the public might have expected. Through the 2000s and 2010s, Sorvino worked consistently, not in tentpole films, but in the kinds of projects that require an actor to show up with everything they have and trust the work will find its audience. In 2000, she played Daisy Buchanan in a television Great Gatsby. In 2003, Gods and Generals with Jeff Daniels. In 2004, The Final Cut with Robin Williams. In 2005, the Lifetime miniseries Human Trafficking earned her a Golden Globe nomination for her performance as an IC agent investigating trafficking networks alongside Donald Sutherland. The scale changed. The commitment did not. She moved into television with willingness to follow the material. Intruders on BBC America, recurring roles on Falling Skies and Modern Family, the espionage drama Condor with William Hurt and Brendan Fraser, stars horror comedy Shining Vale alongside Courtney Cox. None of this was the career of someone who had disappeared. It was the career of someone who had adapted to new terrain and done so with professionalism. Then came a quiet renaissance. In 2020, Ryan Murphy cast her in the Netflix series Hollywood as an actress whose career was destroyed by the studio system. The meta-resonance was unmistakable. Here was Sorvino, an actress whose career had been derailed by a powerful man, playing a fictional actress controlled by the same forces. In 2021, she played Marsha Lewis in Murphy's Impeachment, American Crime Story. These were substantive performances in high-profile productions that reminded audiences she had never lost the ability to be compelling. The talent had not gone anywhere. It had just been waiting for the right doors to open. In 2023, she appeared in Sound of Freedom, a film about human trafficking that connected directly to her years of advocacy, the kind of convergence that only happens when someone has been quietly building toward something for a very long time. In July 2022, Paul Sorvino died at 83. Mira wrote that her heart was rent asunder, that a life of love and joy and wisdom was over, that he was the most wonderful father. If you go back and watch the moment from the 1996 Oscars, when a 28-year-old Mira tells the audience the award honored her father and the camera finds Paul with his face in his hands weeping, you understand something that biography alone cannot convey. He was the person who had warned her about this industry. He was also the person who had taught her everything about how to survive in it. When the Weinstein story broke, Paul told the press that if he had known, the producer would not be walking. The depth of that protectiveness, the love and the fury and the helplessness of it, tells you everything about what that bond meant. That she is still here, still working, still showing up with her full self, suggests she listened to both pieces of her father's advice. She pursued acting as the thing she loved most, and she built a life around it, a life of family and advocacy and quiet purpose that could sustain her when the industry could not. Mira Sorvino showed early on that a classically beautiful woman could be a serious character actress, that intelligence and glamour were not opposites, that an actor could win an Oscar for comedy and then play Marilyn Monroe with genuine pathos, that the same person could carry a Del Toro creature film and a Stillman comedy of manners and a Spike Lee period piece about fear and paranoia in 1977 New York. She demonstrated that range was not a liability, but a form of artistic integrity. She modeled an artistic restlessness that, in a better industry, would have been celebrated rather than punished. You can see its traces in actresses who came after her, the willingness to move between comedy and drama without apology, the refusal to be pinned to a type. When you watch an actress today pivot from franchise film to an indie without anyone blinking, remember there was a generation of women who tried exactly that and were told, in ways both spoken and unspoken, it was not how the game was played. Sorvino was one of the people who demonstrated the possibility, even when the system did not know what to do with it. As of 2025, Mira Sorvino is 57. In September, she made her Broadway debut as Roxy Hart in Chicago at the Ambassador Theater. She said she had wished to sing and dance in a Broadway musical since she was a small child, and that joining such a legendary show was a dream come true. A Romy and Michele sequel has been announced at 20th Century Studios, bringing her back together with Lisa Kudrow nearly 30 years after the original. She continues to act. She continues her advocacy. She lives in Los Angeles with her family. None of that sounds like disappearance. It sounds like someone still here, still interested, still engaged on her own terms. The terms may not be the ones the industry set for her in 1996, but they are hers. So what happened to Mira Sorvino? That is the question people ask, and it is the wrong question, because it implies a vanishing, an ending, a story with a final act that has already played out. And the truth is that there was no ending. There was a career shaped by forces visible and invisible, by an industry that did not know how to use what she offered, by a powerful man's deliberate cruelty, now exposed and acknowledged, by structural changes that made a certain kind of acting life harder for everyone, and by her own choices about what mattered, choices that may have cost her visibility but preserved something more valuable. She did not vanish. The industry changed. The rules changed. The people who controlled access to opportunity were sometimes acting in bad faith. And through all of that, she kept working. She kept showing up. She kept being interesting, which is the hardest thing to sustain in a system that rewards simplicity. If they're the lesson in her story, it is not tidy. It is not about triumph over adversity or justice being served in some satisfying way. It is about the gap between what an actor can do and what an industry allows them to do. It is about the cost of complexity in a world that prefers clarity. It is about the difference between visibility and sustainability, and how the people who choose sustainability often disappear from the public conversation without ever disappearing from the work itself. Think about Linda Ashe in Mighty Aphrodite. Think about Romy White dancing at a reunion. Think about Dr. Susan Tyler descending into the tunnels beneath New York. Think about a woman on a Broadway stage in 2025, stepping into the spotlight as Roxy Hart, fulfilling a childhood dream. These are all the same person, and the fact that she is still finding new ways to show up tells you everything about who she has been all along. She is still here. She is still working. She is still, after all these years, more interesting than any single role could contain. And maybe that was always the point. Not the awards, not the box office. The point was the work, the chance to become someone else and help an audience see something they had not seen before. Mira Sorvino understood that from the beginning. She just had to wait for the rest of the world to catch up. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Which performance of hers meant the most to you? If you enjoyed this kind of reflective look at an actor's journey, consider liking this video and subscribing. There are more stories like this one, and they are worth telling. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.